As the United States continued its recovery from the Great Depression during the mid-1930s, Louis K. Liggett, founder of the United Drug Company and Rexall brand, saw this as a prime opportunity to advertise his business. Rexall was a chain of drugstores in the United States with its headquarters in Boston, Massachusetts. In 1935, Liggett figured that instead of having people travel and spend what little money they had to travel to a national convention, he could put the convention on wheels and bring it to the people. This led him to the railroads. Liggett wanted a streamliner train, so he approached the New York Central Railroad in January 1936 with his proposal. Locomotive number 2873, a 482 L2C Mohawk, was given an Art Deco streamlining job with royal blue, black, and white Rexall paint, blue Rexall lettering, and a New York Central plate on the front. Its shrouding was done by Carl Cantola. He reworked his shrouding made for the Central's 464 Commodore Vanderbilt engine in 1934. He simply elongated the shrouding to fit a 482. The locomotive would be converted to burn oil instead of coal, as coal was more scarce out west, and the train would be going on a nationwide tour. The locomotive project was completed at the New York Central's West Albany shops in March 1936 over the course of 30 days working double shifts. Liggett now needed a consist of passenger cars to display Rexall's goods. The Pullman Company was tasked with remodeling 12 heavyweight cars as exhibit cars and giving them a paint job to match the locomotive. Each car was named after a Rexall trademark or company department, with nearly every Rexall product offered on display inside. The first car, Can't Leak, Rexall's line of rubber-based products, had a gas-powered engine and dynamo to produce electricity for the 3,000 light bulbs and 20 motors that made up the high-class displays. Each car preceding it served its own individual purpose. The second car was a sleeper for the 50 New York Central, Pullman, and United Drug Company staff, along with a 4-piece band. 4 exhibit cars followed containing large assortments of Rexall products, advertising and promotional material, scale models of company buildings, and plenty of information to introduce the visitor to the world of Rexall products. The 7th car was a lecture car, with much of its interior space cleared out for 88 folding chairs during meetings. At night, it was converted into a dance hall for the 4-piece Rexall Train Orchestra. The 8th through 12th cars were off-limits to the public, restricted to Rexall drugstore owners known as Rexallites and onboard staff. The 8th car was a dining car with 3 master chefs. The 9th was another lecture car for meetings. The 10th was a bar lounge and dance hall for Rexallites and fellow druggists. The 11th was another sleeper for the onboard staff. And the 12th was an observation car reserved for Louis Liggett. With everything in place, the train was ready for its nationwide and international tour across the US and Canada. It first arrived at Boston's North Station, where it was placed on display for 4 days, starting March 22, 1936. An inauguration ceremony for the train was held on March 26th, with the train being christened as Rexy by smashing a champagne bottle on one of the locomotive's crank pins. The train then made its way north to Portland, Maine, on the first leg of its 29,000-mile journey on March 29th. Over the course of its trip, the train would be advertised as the $1 Million Streamlined Train, a sight that shouldn't be missed. At each stop, the train was given a neon Rexall sign on the side of the first display car. The 4-piece band would parade around the town and musically advertise the train. Visitors could get free tickets to the train at their local Rexall store and then go tour the train. From Maine, the train headed west for the Midwest, then south towards Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas. The train continued west until reaching Los Angeles, California, for a stop lasting from May 16th to the 20th, seeing 37,000 visitors with a platform of speakers being hosted too. When the train stopped in San Francisco from May 23rd to the 26th, new lettering was painted onto the locomotive's nose reading, "The Rexall Train." The tour continued north for the Pacific Northwest, reaching Seattle by June, where the train would turn back east. In Idaho, the train turned south again, then east in Utah until traveling across the Great Continental Divide to Denver, Colorado on June 13th with a helper engine. Moving north to Cheyenne, Wyoming, Rexy's train met a Union Pacific M10003 and M10002 Streamliner. Through the Great Plains, Rexall headed north for the upper Midwest region. On July 4th at Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, the train attended a 4th of July celebration. From there, the train was Chicago bound for maintenance. On July 8th, the train arrived in the Chicago area, and the locomotive was sent to the New York Central shops for repainting and servicing. The coaches went back to Pullman shops for repainting as well, along with replacing the displays with more seasonal goods. The train was put back together and placed on display at Chicago's Union Station from August 2nd to the 4th, where 1,000 druggists and 29,000 people toured the train. Afterwards, the train headed east for Indiana and Liggett's home state of Michigan. The train arrived in Liggett's hometown of Detroit on August 9th, and he was given a large bronze commemorative plaque.
The plaque reads, "Dear Pardner, this is presented to you by your staunch Detroit friends in commemoration of the visit of the Rexall Train, August 9, 1936.
The Rexall Train crossed the border into Ontario, Canada, where the train made a stop in London, Toronto, and Montreal, Quebec, bringing the total number of visitors thus far past 1 million. From there, the train curved back south into Maine and headed for Boston on August 22nd, where the trip began. New York City's Grand Central Terminal and Penn Station did not have the capacity to display the train for 3 days, so the Rexall Train was moved to a Pennsylvania railroad yard in Newark, New Jersey from August 31st to September 2nd. From there, Rexy was westbound again through Pennsylvania, New York, back to Pennsylvania, then Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois. By the night of October 5th, the train was an hour out of Davenport, Iowa, when Louis Liggett was awakened from his bed by his observation car becoming derailed as the train backed into a siding. Nobody was hurt and nothing was damaged, but it took 5 hours to re-rail the car. From Iowa, the train continued southeast, now reaching Appalachian states like Kentucky, West Virginia, and Virginia. On October 14th, while traveling over the Virginian Railway, Class MB282 locomotive number 437 would be coupled to the front of the Rexall engine and lead the train, representing the working man's locomotive. In late October, the train made a stop in Nashville, Tennessee, where the 2 millionth visitor, identical twin sisters, toured the train. The train winded its way through the southeastern U.S., nearing the end of its long journey. The last stop was Terminal Station in Atlanta, Georgia, arriving on November 19, 1936. The following day, a record 25,505 people visited the train in a single day. Louis Liggett hosted a dinner on the Rexall train for all the staff, expressing great thanks for their hard work allowing the convention on wheels to happen. Once all was said and done, over the 236-day travel time from March 29th to November 20th, 1936, it was estimated 29,000 miles had been traveled across 52 different railroads in 47 states and 2 Canadian provinces. Onboard meetings were attended by 10,000 Rexallites and 20,000 special guests. It was estimated it took $1 million to operate the train. 262 stops were made with 2.3 million people touring the train, thanks in part to extensive national, regional, and local advertising. Carl Cantola would later remark in 1981 of New York Central Mohawk Division engineer Bert Daniels, who traveled on the Rexall train. Bert took a good supply of tools and lubricants along since a constant concern was the friction bearings of the engine truck axles, which required frequent maintenance. It was a record achievement for one locomotive to complete such a demanding tour without any breakdowns or significant accidents. For this, Bert Daniels deserves a great deal of credit. In general, the campaign was a huge success. People from all around came to see the train, and huge gatherings were held at the train's meeting place in each town. The down-to-earth Louis Liggett received warm and grand welcomes, with hundreds of regionally fitting gifts, including the bell off the Rexall engine. Liggett opened a museum in Rexall's Boston offices featuring his gifts the following year, 1937. An educational board game for kids based on the trip was even produced that same year. However, the train's equipment soon had to be returned to revenue service. On November 22, 1936 at St. Louis, Missouri, the coach displays and interiors were removed. The train went to Chicago where the coaches were returned to Pullman. The locomotive returned to freight service on the New York Central as number 2873. The passenger cars would be sold to numerous railroads across the U.S. in the coming years. Louis Liggett, though, would pass away on June 5, 1946 at age 71, leaving a lasting legacy with his Rexall Drug Company and accompanying train. Carl Cantola, the Streamliner's designer, passed away on April 23, 1992 at age 89. Locomotive 2873 would be retired in 1953 and eventually scrapped. As for the train's coaches, there is still one notable one that's around today. Liggett's observation car had been sold to the Northern Pacific in 1941 and was used as a business car until 1970 when it was turned into Andy's Diner in Seattle, Washington. It closed in 2008, but was reopened as the Orient Express restaurant that is still open as of the making of this video. As for the Rexall brand, they moved their headquarters from Boston to Los Angeles in 1947, known as the world's largest drugstore. However, the brand was soon in decline by the late 1950s and eventually sold off by 1977 and again in 1985 to Sundown. It was with the hard work of Louis Liggett and all the staff aboard the Streamlined Rexall Train that we have this unique piece of railroading history. A high-class $1 million streamlined train made specifically for touring internationally and spreading the word of Rexall and their drugstore goods.